Well, gamers, is this like the third or fourth setup video of the year so far, and we're only at the beginning of May? I have no idea, but I want to welcome you back to another video, first and foremost. And the reason I'm making this is mostly in two parts. Is I've been all over the place this year in terms of what setups I like and don't like, and there's different setups that work different for different tracks and so on and so forth. Second part being is there's been a few new faces to the channel recently, and I feel like at least once or twice in every single live stream that I do, somebody asks to see my controls or my setup as such. And I realised that the last one that I'd done isn't the one that's kind of on the main part of my channel right now. So I thought it'd be best if we go back through things. I kind of show you what I'm rocking these days. So the first part will literally just be all of my controller settings. So how my lean is, my gain, brakes, all that good stuff, and the button inputs, etc. And then the second part is I will quickly show you the suspension. So I do have a separate video for the suspension on this bike right now. My main bike of choice at the moment is the Husqvarna 450 on the OEM bikes. It's just been my most consistent one so far. It's given me some wins. It's given me some losses as well, but I blame those on myself rather than the bike. Worth mentioning that the suspension that I will be showing off at the end is mostly Supercross base. However, if you have nothing for outdoors and you just want to slap it on as well, it does an okay job. Just be warned that it's a little bit on the stiffer side, so if you need to just adjust it and make it a bit softer to absorb the bumps a bit better, then you certainly can do so. I myself, as you boys know, I've mentioned many times, I am not a real big setup guy in general. I usually don't really know what it is that I'm doing, so I do apologise for that. You might have to go elsewhere to learn how to tune your bikes accordingly, but outside of that, this controller setup and lean settings, etc., I've been up and down all over the place this year. I've used one set of lean, I've used another one. Sometimes it worked well for Supercross, and other times it didn't work well for outdoors, etc. And now I've kind of found the best of both worlds. It's a setup that I've had a fastest qualifying time on in one of the outdoor rounds. I haven't won an outdoors race on it, to be fair, but I have won it in indoor rounds, and that's was kind of what my focus was on at the moment. But it's something that I'm now very comfortable on, very consistent on, and if you want to give it a go and it turns out that you enjoy it, then by all means. So without further ado, let's stop spinning laps around this track that I'm pretty sure was just ripped from MX Simulator. I don't think there's a link for it at all. It's just a random one that I found in my folder, so I apologise if I don't have it linked down below. I'll show you what we're looking like. For all of you passionate gamers, you can now get 20% off all G Fuel products worldwide by using code LINS at checkout. And for any of you motorheads looking for some new drip or apparel, use code MXPR_LINS15 fxrracing.eu to get 15% off. All links and codes are in the description down below. Enjoy the video and drop a cheeky little like and subscribe. So to start things off, I've got my controller here at the bottom left of my screen as well, so you can see what buttons I'm pressing any time to link things up. So for my leaning, I turn my left stick left and right. For my throttle, I have it so I press down the right trigger. For my brake, left trigger. My left trigger does both brakes at the same time because I have them combined. And then I have a separate brake, which is my L1, which is just rear brake only. So one button does both, one button does just the rear. I don't find any scenario where you want just the front brake, so that's just how I have my brakes mapped out. My clutch is circle, so it's literally just on or off. I have my front back lean up on the right stick, down on the right stick, or left on the right stick, right on the right stick for leaning left, right, forwards and backwards. Lean tracking I've disabled, so you can see all like my movements. For the direct lean, this is the important one. This is what I've been messing around with all year so far. I went as low as 40, I went as high as 100, I am now sat on 80. So, in short, lower your setting, the slower your bike's going to lean over. Higher the setting, the quicker it's going to lean over. It's more one-to-one with what you put into the left stick. So at 100, you can absolutely munch Supercross tracks. However, following ruts in outdoors becomes very difficult because you have to be really precise all the time. So I've dropped this down to 80, and I've got a Supercross win on it. I've also got a fastest outdoors qualifying time on it. So this is what I'm staying with now. This is what I'm really comfortable with, happy with, and I recommend you giving this a go if you are someone who doesn't enjoy having it maxed out at 100. As I said earlier, combined brakes turned on right here. Minimum brake percentage is 19, max is 150. That's just what I like running. You can adjust this, so maybe it gives more input at a very low amount, or maybe it gives less input when you're maxed out. Maybe you're locking up the brakes too much. You might want to turn this down a bit. Over on the right-hand side, under lean settings here, I've got a 10 dead zone because I have a little bit of stick drift here on my left stick. If I have it lower, then it will be like slightly turning left or right the entire time, and I don't really want that. Linearity is at 120. This is one of them settings that I just haven't touched since I've basically got the game. I couldn't tell you all of the ins and outs of it. This is just how I like riding. Smoothing is off. 0, 0. 94 gain is basically how far the bike will let you lean over, if that makes sense. So the higher you go, the further you can get leant over and cranked over. So in some tracks, again, maybe if you're in Supercross, you might want to turn it up a bit to really rail the bowl turns. However, be warned that obviously the lower you lean, the easier it is to tuck the front or drag foot pegs and so on and so forth. 94 seems like a really good base for me. It kind of gets me to the point where I can feel the pegs starting to drag, but then not really go too much further than that. So mess around with the gain. If it's too sensitive, turn it down a little bit. I used to rock around 91 or so, but as I've wanted to increase my speed as the years gone on and the faster people have started rocking up, I found turning it up to around 94, 95 is where I enjoy it. Into the throttle settings here. Feel free to pause this. I'm just going to briefly skip through these because this is the same as other videos in the past. 0 dead zone, 100 linearity, smoothing on to help me with that smooth throttle control. 30 press, 10 release, 104 gain. Over to the brakes, 0 dead zone, 100 linearity, no smoothing, 0, 0, 124.8. Over to the rear brake, 0, 100, smoothing on, 30, 10, 124.8. And most of the reason that I have smoothing on this is I don't like locking up the back end too much. I feel like as soon as the back end starts sliding, that's when your braking becomes a bit inconsistent and you might start overshooting corners. So that's why I've got the smooth on there. Clutch, I believe this is just fully stock as the game comes. So 0, 0, smoothing on, 0, 100, 100. Down to forward and back lean. At 10 dead zone again, just in case I have any stick drift at all. Linearity 100, smoothing on, 80, 80, 100. And it should be exactly the same for left, right lean, which it is. 10%, 100%, smoothing on, 80, 80, 100. So moving over to the input 2 tab. To change up, I play, bear in mind, I play claw grip, so I hold my controller like this with my right finger down, so I can press all these buttons and steer and brake and everything all at the same time, so bear that in mind. So shifting up, I've got on my triangle button. Shifting down is my square button. Starter is K on my keyboard. I don't need to start my engine at any point because I've got auto clutch, which I'll show you in a bit. Push bike forwards and backwards is up and down on my D-pad. To sit down is my right stick. And I have this box here, direct, turned on. What this means is most people have it so it's off, so they just click the right stick down once and they'll sit down. They then click it again and they'll stand up. I have it so I have to hold it down to stay sat down, and then anytime it's let go, I am stood up. It just feels like I've got more one-to-one control with the bike, and coming from an MX simulator background, that just feels natural for me. Dab, I don't do anything. I've got a auto dab button, or auto dab selected in simulation as well. To reset to the track, I have my share button, and to set a track marker, I've got it as like my pause/option button on my controller. Although it's not showing up actually on my controller overlay, but you can see this one here, share. It's the one to the right, just next to the green triangle button on my controller. To change view, I've got it on my keyboard. There's no point having it on your controller unless you're planning on changing view mid-race. To look back, I've just got it on my touchpad, so to see who's behind me. Heading is looking left and right, so I've got that set to left and right on the D-pad. It's nice to see where people are, especially going up the start straight, etc. And then to pull a tear off, I click down my L3 button. Raising arm is just my R1, so to say thank you to lappers or to say sorry if you accidentally take someone out. And then my trick button is just X on my controller. That is literally every single button on my controller being used in the race. I have nothing spare to use, so if there's any other options that come out at any point in the game's future, I might have to give something up. Replay camera, this is all just your specifications. This is all just set up so I can move around with my controller. Graphics, I run them as maxed out as I can within reason. So if you are ever having FPS issues on this game, one of the best settings that you can turn down is anti-aliasing. That'll give you the biggest boost in FPS. Max out all of this, turn all the lighting on. I have 3D grass off because a lot of the time I, first of all, don't really like how it looks most of the time. But then other times it can, again, be a massive cause of FPS issues. Track screens is, if you ever played a track like Assen, which is a stock track, and you ride down the start straight, you turn right in front of you, after you turn right, is a big track screen, and you can see basically what's going on. You can turn that on or off. That is a big contributor to FPS if a track has that. Over to miscellaneous, this is just, volume, units being from the UK. I don't use freedom units, for example. Date format, the correct date format. Day, month, year. And then bandwidth. If you don't know what bandwidth is, this is basically the higher your bandwidth is, the further away you can see people from. So if you have it very, very low, you'll only see people like basically next to you, and then they'll disappear off your screen, which helps with FPS, but sometimes can be a little bit sketchy, especially off the start. So I turn mine up to high so I can see people at a decent distance, but they're not loaded around the entirety of the track to save with FPS. Auto chat, this is some really old stuff. I should probably change these now, to be fair. Track, no idea what any of this stuff does. turn all that off. Leave flags on 2D so I can see if it's like the last lap, finish, or lap being lapped, etc. And then simulation tab is quite an important one. Field of view is 115, tilt is 0, and pitch is 31. And then when I'm on the bike, I'll show you what I do to get my camera angle looking how it does. All of this is turned off, so don't bother with any of this. I show my HUD, and then sometimes I show my rider stand as well, because chat likes seeing when I'm standing up or sitting down. Over on the right-hand side, people want to see my third-person view recently. So I've got follow bike on, distance is 20, height is 70, lateral offset is 0. And then for riding aids, no lean help, no automatic shift. Shift help is on, which just means that I've not got to hold the clutch in every time I change gear. As soon as I press the change gear buttons, it will automatically shut the throttle off for me. It will change gear, and then it will automatically go back to being on. Automatic clutch just means I can come to a dead stop without having to hold the clutch in, and the bike won't stall. Over to brake help, it just means you don't lock up the brakes quite as much. I've got traction help off, no automatic rider leaning. Automatic rider dab is if you're moving at a very, very, very slow speed and turning, your foot will almost like trail on the ground rather than being directly up in front of you. It'll be down a little bit, which I think just helps with low speed stability, like really, really low speed stability. No automatic rider sit, but then I have automatic tyre change on. So anytime you go back to the pits and you go to the track again, it'll change your tyres for you. So when I'm on the track, the camera that I use is the dynamic onboard view, which is the one that basically lets you be able to see what your rider's doing. If you have it in third person, obviously you can see this anyway, but if you're in static and you forwards and backwards, side to side, you can't really see anything that goes on. So I prefer the dynamic one, so I can see what the bike's doing underneath me. And then if you press Shift and C on your keyboard, it will say CH. And then using the arrows on your keyboard, you can move your camera up and down, forwards and back. So I move all the way back. I press Shift C again, and it will say Seat V at the bottom of your screen. I then move it all the way down with my arrows, and then Shift C one more time, and that's it. So my field of view settings is 115.0.31. I then move it all the way back and all the way down to give me this like look here. So it can maybe look like the FOV is higher than it actually is, but I promise you that it isn't. For max HUD, I have like the map turned on the right hand side over here. I've got speed on at the bottom corner, just so I can see how fast I'm going a lot of time. Standings up in the top left here, see all the positions, and then timing up at the top left to track your lap times as well. And then coming over into the pits here, I'll just quickly skim through the suspension and everything for you. Feel free to pause and just kind of enter this yourself. Again, this is for the Husky 450. This is a supercross suspension, but can be used on some outdoors tracks if they're not disgustingly bumpy. If you're riding the GP of France, for example, which is an incredibly rough and choppy track, you're probably going to get kicked over the handlebars with this, so that's just worth mentioning. I always on the 450 run a 80 front tyre and a 120 rear tyre. If you're on a 250, it might be worth even running a 100 rear tyre because they don't produce enough power to spin the back end up anyway. But on a 450, I always stick as a 120. I don't touch tyre pressure at all. I will up the front brake leverage, so I believe that makes it a little bit more aggressive. And then over to suspension. Again, feel free to pause and write this down. The numbers that you want are the black ones. The red ones here are the default suspension numbers, so don't be putting these in. Put these ones in on the left-hand side. Drivetrain 1354, a little bit shorter than most people would like, but I like being able to go around some corners like Supercross bowl turns in like third gear, for example, and just ride the whole bowl, not having to change gear at all, and then just hit a triple or a quad straight out of the corner. And I find it's very, very helpful for things like that. And then going on to the others tab, I use aggressive mapping because that 120 rear tyre again has plenty of grip, so you haven't got to worry about being gentle on the RPM. And then feel free to copy all of that geometry as well. And that is everything that I run at the moment. So that's what I'm very, very comfortable on. Again, apologies that it's like the third or fourth setup video that I've made already, and we're only 4 and a bit months into the year now at this point. But it's just finally a setting that I'm quite comfortable with, because I was doing a little bit of soul searching, trying to find what I did and didn't enjoy, and now we're at a point now where I'm fairly comfortable on the game. And if you was to throw any track at me, whether it's Supercross, outdoors, enduro, for example, any weird and wacky stuff, I'm fairly confident I can hop on it, and then within the space of a handful of laps, I should have a track fairly dialed. And that is something that is very, very important in this game, is finding settings that you are comfortable on. There's no point just copying someone's like for like and just praying it will make you better, because everyone's a little bit different. Everyone plays the game a little bit different. I like being quite smooth on my sticks, and I'm quite progressive with my turning and accelerating. There's some people who like being a little bit more aggressive with their button inputs that these settings might not work for. for example. There's some people that like tap their sticks when they're turning rather than just being smooth and holding it. So that might not work for you. If you tap sticks, you might want to turn your direct lean down rather than having it as high as 80% like I do. So just things to bear in mind. So hopefully you guys can find this helpful at all. That'll probably just do it for me, a fairly shortish one, although I feel like it's gone on for quite some time. Let me know if it's been helpful. If you find that you improve any lap times at all, then my job here is done. If not, then maybe go back to what you were using and maybe it's just not the setup for you. But this is what I feel good on. It's what I'm going to be running for the foreseeable future, and that will do it for me. So if you did enjoy, please do drop a little like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It's very much appreciated. Have a lovely rest of the day, whatever you guys are up to, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace.
I'm working hard, I'm sacrificing my life, I'm sacrificing my mind, I'm sacrificing my sanity, but most importantly, I'm sacrificing my time. Boy, I feel fine, I feel like I am a king. Honestly, I can't complain. Even with faith that's the size of a grain of some salt, I will still move a mountain and do what I want. I got